Alright mates, how's it going? In today's video, chapter 13 of Rise of the Horde by Gul'dan. Time for the orcs to learn some Warlock stuff. So let's go!
How is it we did not see? It is easy to lay the blame on the charismatic Gul'dan, or the weak Nazul, or the power-hungry Gul'dan. But they asked each individual orc to pretend that hot was cold, that sweet was sour. Even when everything in us screamed against what we were being told, we followed.
Are we absolutely certain that Gul'dan wrote this story 15 years ago?
Perhaps I, too, would have obeyed like a whipped cur. Perhaps the fear was so great, and the respect for our leaders so ingrained. Or perhaps I, like my father and others, would start to see the flaws.
Blackhand looked out from under his bushy eyebrows and frowned. But to be fair, he was always frowning. When Gul'dan had requested to meet with Blackhand a fortnight ago, and demanded that he bring his most promising shaman but tell no one, Blackhand had agreed. He'd always liked Gul'dan, better than Nazul, in fact, although he wasn't entirely sure why. But as Gul'dan stood there and explained the situation, the Blackrock chieftain figured it out. He liked Gul'dan because this former apprentice now master was just like him. He had no use for ideals, only practicalities, and they both shared the same cravings for power. Nazul is an honoured and valued advisor, but it has been decided that I would be a better choice to lead the orcs from now on. And a wise leader surrounds himself with trusted allies. Those who are strong and obedient, who will fulfill their obligations, and for their loyalty, they will be held in high regard and richly rewarded. Blackhand recoiled at the word obedient, but the whole high regard and richly rewarded thing sounded pretty cool. You asked for the shaman. I assume you know what is happening with them. I have heard. The elements are no longer obeying them. Some of them are beginning to mutter it is because what we're doing is wrong. Do you believe that? I don't know what to believe. This is all new territory. The ancestors say one thing, but the elements won't come. Blackhand was harbouring a growing suspicion, but he held his tongue. Many orcs thought him a fool, and he preferred to keep it that way, because it gave him somewhat of an advantage. But Gul'dan now stared at him, with a glint in his eye that suggested maybe he was fully aware that there was more to Blackhand than he let on. We are a proud race. It is sometimes painful to admit that we do not know everything. Gul'dan and the entities he leads, the mysteries they harbour, the power they wield, we are as ignorant children before them. But they are willing to teach us, share with us some of this power. Power that is not dependent on the spirits of air, earth, fire and water. Gul'dan then waved his hand in a dismissive gesture. Power such as that is feeble, unreliable. It can desert you in the middle of a battle and leave you helpless. Blackhand's face hardened, because he and his clan had witnessed this very thing. A whole bunch of clans had. And suddenly, fighting the Draenei had become a lot harder real fast. Imagine what you could do if you led a group of shaman who controlled the source of their powers, instead of begging for it. Imagine if these shaman had servants, who could also fight on your side. Servants who could, for example, send your enemies fleeing helplessly in terror, suck their magic dry, distract them. I can imagine success under those conditions. Success almost every time. Exactly. But how do you know this is true, and not some false promise whispered in your ear? Gul'dan's douchebag grin then widened. Because, my friend, I have experienced it. I will teach your shaman everything I know. Alright then. That is not all that I can offer. I know a way to make you and your warriors more powerful, fiercer, deadlier. All this can be ours if we but claim it. Ours. I cannot waste my time speaking to every single leader of every single clan every time they have a complaint. There are those in agreement of what you and I think is the best way to proceed, and those who are not. Go on. However, Gul'dan did not go on, at least not immediately. Instead, he went silent, and Blackhand just kind of kicked some stones on the ground for a little bit. Most of the orcs thought him to be impetuous and hot-headed, but he knew the value of patience. I envision two groups of leaders of the orcs. One, a simple governing council, to make decisions for the whole. Its leader elected, its business conducted openly for all to see. The second, a shadow of this group, hidden, secret, powerful. This shadow council will be comprised of orcs who share our vision, and who are willing to make the necessary sacrifices to obtain it. I see. So a public leadership, and a private one. And to which, Gul'dan, shall I belong? You have charisma, strength, Even your enemies know you are a master strategist. It will be easy to have you elected as leader of the Orcs. I am no puppet. Of course not. Which is why you will belong to both. We cannot work together unless we can trust one another, after all. Blackhand looked into Gul'dan's eyes and smiled. He didn't trust this guy in the least, but it didn't matter. They both wanted power, but they weren't in competition with one another. But those thoughts were then interrupted by movement in the corner of his eye. And as he looked, he saw Nazul sort of weakly moving about. What about him? He means nothing. The beautiful one wishes him kept alive for the moment. He has something special in mind for Nazul. He will still be a figurehead. Love for Nazul is too deeply ingrained in the Orcs for him to be cast aside, but he is no threat to us. The Blackrock Shaman, you say you will train them in these new magics? I will train them myself. If they adapt well to the new arts, I will place them first among my new Warlocks. Warlock? So that was what he was calling it. Sounded interesting. What say you to my proposal, Blackhand? I say hail to the Horde, and hail to the Shadow Council. Meanwhile, at the sacred mountain of Oshagun, a pretty pissed off crowd of Orcs had gathered, yelling rabble rabble and stuff. Gul'dan had sent out letters to those he trusted, and had received confirmation that the elements had indeed shunned all of the Orcs. And so, a whole bunch of clan leaders and their shaman had come to the sacred mountain demanding that Nazul give them an explanation. I know why you've come. It is indeed true that the elements no longer answer the shaman's call for aid. Gul'dan regarded Nazul and noted that he looked even more frail than usual, more downtrodden than Gul'dan had ever seen before. Some of you, upon discovering this, leapt to the conclusion that what we are doing is wrong. But that is incorrect. What we are doing is achieving power the likes of which we've never seen. Gul'dan has studied these powers, and he will answer any questions you have. Nazul then stepped aside, allowing Gul'dan the spotlight. What I am about to tell you may be hard for you to accept, but I have faith that you are not close-minded when it comes to ways to better ourselves. Just as we were surprised to learn that there were powerful beings, other than the ancestors and the elements, we've also discovered that there are other ways to harness magic. Power that is not predicated on asking, or begging, or pleading. Power that comes because we are strong enough to demand it to come. To control it when it does. To force it to obey us, rather than the other way round. Gul'dan then paused, for dramatic effect, and Gul'dan turned to Drekthar. Is this possible? I have no idea. But I tell you, after that last battle, Gul'dan, we were doing the work of the ancestors. How could the elements refuse us under those circumstances? The shock and shame was still evident in Drekthar's voice, and Gul'dan could kinda understand. The shaman must have felt like a warrior that reached for his axe only to find a big flaccid willy instead. I see you are all finally starting to understand the value of what the Beautiful One is offering. I have studied with this great entity, as have these few noble shaman. Gul'dan then stepped back to reveal a whole bunch of shaman dressed in leather armour. What they have learned will be taught to every single shaman who wishes to be instructed. This I swear to you. Follow me now, and you will see their formidable skills for yourself. For some reason that he didn't fully understand, Gul'dan suddenly felt ill, and Draka, noticing his abrupt paleness, squeezed his arm assuringly. What is it? I don't know. I just feel as though something terrible is about to happen. I've been feeling that way for a long time. However, Gul'dan had no choice but to put all his effort into keeping his face neutral. He was responsible for the welfare of his people, and his position with Nazul and Gul'dan was already pretty precarious. If the Frostwolf clan were to be exiled from this new wider horde, it would almost certainly mean extinction for them. Sometime later, Gul'dan, the mysterious new shaman, and the large gathering of Orcs reached a large open valley, and Gul'dan halted in front of a tent. He then beckoned some Blackrock warriors over, who proceeded to enter the tent, and as they came back out again, Gul'dan saw that they were now accompanied by some Draenei prisoners. When the Blackrock clan fought with the magic I am about to share with you, their victory was so absolute they were able to take several prisoners. These prisoners will allow me to show you what this new magic can do. Gul'dan was bloody angry now. Slaying an armed foe in combat was one thing, slaughtering helpless prisoners was another. But as he opened his mouth to yell his protests, a hand touched his arm. 'Twas Orgrim's. You knew about this. Keep your voice down. Yes, I knew. I was there when we captured them. It is the way of such things, Gul'dan. It did not used to be the way of the Orcs. It is now. It is a sad necessity. For what it's worth, I do not believe that this will become a common practice. The goal is to slay the Draenei, not torment them. Juritan stared at his old friend, and Orgrim stared back for a few moments before looking away. It was understandable, really. There wasn't anything Orgrim could have done to prevent this. He was second in command, oath-bound to support his chieftain. Gul'dan then gestured to the first Blackrock shaman in line, and they, looking slightly nervous, closed their eyes and concentrated. A sound like rushing wind filled the air, whilst the shaman glowed a kind of weird purple, and then suddenly, a little imp dickhead appeared. Pretty little pets to be sure, but what do they do? The crowd laughed, and Gul'dan smiled at Grommash indulgently. Patience, Hellscream. One of the Draenei was then cut loose from the rest and shoved forward, and the little imp that the first shaman had summoned started jumping about. And then suddenly, fire erupted from its hands and slammed into the helpless Draenei. And a ball of darkness formed at the shaman's fingertips, rushing towards the prisoner as well. He screamed in pain as his blue flesh bubbled and melted, and then he was silent and still. And if that wasn't bad enough, Juritan then stood shocked as most of the crowd around him erupted into cries of approval and delight at the sight of a bound foe dying in helpless torment. And Juritan threw up a little bit in his mouth. He danced in this valley, sung to the moon, conspired with a boyhood friend, met his beloved, and now here he was watching his own people revel in suffering and death. Behold, I give you Warlocks. There were a lot of wild celebrations that evening, but Juritan didn't take part in any of them. In fact, he'd forbid any of the Frostwolves from participating as well. And so, sat by the fire, there was a pretty awkward silence. My chieftain, will you permit us to learn the ways of the Warlocks? I have a question for you first. Do you approve of what was done to the prisoners today? It would be better had we attacked them in honest combat, but they are our enemies. They've proven that. Proven that they will fight back when attacked. That is all that's been proven. I know, this is the will of the ancestors, but today I beheld something that I never thought I would see. I saw the sacred fields, where for countless years our people met in peace, defiled by the blood of those who couldn't even lift a hand to defend themselves. Juritan then saw movement at the edge of his little circle, and caught Orgrim's scent, but he continued. In the shadow of Oshagun itself, those who slew the Draenei today did not do so to protect us from an immediate threat. They butchered prisoners in order to show off. Orgrim coughed, and Juritan motioned him forward. Orgrim, the first Warlocks are from your clan. What are your thoughts? If we are to fight the Draenei, and even you Frostwolves are resigned to the necessity of it, then we should fight to be victorious. The elements have abandoned the shaman. They are fickle and unpredictable at best. They were never the most reliable allies, but these new creatures, this new power, seems more dependable. But there was something about them. Draka, I know your concerns. They were definitely not natural powers, but who's to say that's wrong? They exist, so they must have some place in the order of things. Fire is fire, whether it comes with the spirit's blessing or whether it comes from the fingers of a little dancing thing. I agree with our esteemed guest. We have committed to the battle. Surely we do not fight to lose it. Draka shook her head, still definitely unhappy about the whole thing. It is more than summoning fire, or even the strange bolts of darkness. I have fought Draenei, I have slain Draenei, and never have I seen them writhe in such pain, or scream in such torment. And the beings who are serving the Warlocks, they seem to enjoy it. We enjoy the hunt. Juritan didn't like disagreeing with Draka, but, as always, he needed to see all sides of an issue in order to decide what was best for his clan. Is it wrong to wish to win? Is it wrong to take pleasure in the victory? In the hunt? In the victory? No. But I'm talking about the suffering. Perhaps the beings who are summoned to serve feed on that. Perhaps it is necessary to their existence. But it's not necessary to ours. I have always been a shaman. I was born so. And I will embrace the path of the Warlock if my clan leader will permit it, because I understand what those powers can do for us. I'm sorry, Draka, but this is necessary to our existence. Without this, the Draenei will obliterate us. Draka sighed, buried her face in her hands, and wept. And once again, there was nothing but silence around the fire. In fact, Juritan realised it was too silent. There were no sounds of night. No birds, no insects. Almost as if they'd been driven from this place after what had happened. But for some reason, I will permit the Frostwolf clan to learn these arts. Thank you, Juritan. You will not regret this. And we'll leave it at there! Pretty sure he's going to regret this. Link in the description if you're interested in buying the book. as well as for my Discord and my Patreon page and all that stuff. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, all of that bollocks, and all that's left to say is thanks for watching, and see ya!